G'day, welcome back to Brupeg. We've got heaps going on the boat at the moment. We're trying to get the engine and gearbox into the hull, bolted down so that we can start the boat and get it ready for launch. However, we had a snag. Long story, we were trying to mag drill some holes. The mag drill's not big enough. We can't physically get it in. We literally cannot complete that job ourselves. So we farmed that part of the job out to one of the local engineers to get them to drill some holes that we can't actually physically drill. And then once that comes back, we can carry on with the engine. So in the meantime, we have to do something else. Birk found a neat little 15 horse when we were the other day at the tender centre, so we got that for a steal. We're about to get our dinghy up and running. So you might remember this wee thing. We built it quite a while ago. It was a mission and it's all good, but it has a few leaks. So that's today's job.
Brupeg was a sunken fishing trawler that's been brought back to life with the help of volunteers and funded by our Patreons, community and supporters. She'll be crewed by passionate people from around the world. If you'd like to be involved and support the project, please consider joining us on Patreon or subscribe to the channel on YouTube.
Sort of about 8 o'clock. The guys are heading off on the train at 10. And Birk and Dame are going to Bunnings to pick up some stuff. Breakfast the morning of the guys heading off?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for all your help. Carlos and Margaux worked really hard.
Last week you saw us weld a new flat bilge into Brupeg so we could fit the gearbox, but we got held up on the mounts, so we moved over to another job, our alloy dinghy. The alloy hull we found at the scrapyard for $40, and we got some flat sheet rolled into tubes, which Jess and I then figured out the diameter of the original tube and copied it. We welded them together, and then started prepping so that we could weld to the hull. This was one of the most challenging builds that we'd ever done at this point, and we had a lot of people helping. It was pretty amazing, the community that came around to build this little boat. Once the hull was prepped and ready to weld, we started lining these tubes so that we could weld them onto the boat. We started with the back two tubes and then the front, and we thought we'd try and join it somehow. My God, these angles were a nightmare. Rod and his dad Malcolm came over for weeks at a time giving us a hand to try and figure out how to cut these angles. It was probably one of the most complicated things that we've ever managed to achieve. But with some great minds thrown at the task, we managed to get it done. This is Jess learning how to weld with our spool gun for the aluminium, Trev giving us a hand to figure out angles, trimming off little bits and pieces as we go, and then fitting the various parts. And then it was just time to MIG weld everything up. What we didn't realise when we were building this was just how hard it was to get the aluminium to seal using a spool gun. Spool guns don't really like thin aluminium, and this whole boat's built out of 2mm aluminium sheet. Once we got it welded, we set it on its end and filled it with water to try and find any leaks. We made some internal battery boxes because this was going to be electric powered because Jess can't use a Polestar outboard. We made it into an electric boat with 2 batteries, and then we went for a sea trial. Worked a treat. It was awesome to drive around in, but it was a wee bit heavy. So we decided that the next boat we were going to make a little bit different. A jet ski engine inside an aluminium tube dinghy. However, due to time constraints, we decided that we weren't going to build that boat with this jet unit and moved back onto our small dinghy. When we completed our sea trials on the little dinghy, what we didn't realise was there was a few pinholes that had got into the tubes and filled the flotation foam that we put in there up with water, turned the dinghy into an incredibly heavy beast. Getting rid of the foam out of this dinghy was one of the first jobs that Birk gave us a hand with when he arrived back in December of last year. With the foam now gone, it's time to weld it back up.
We're going to have a go at the back end on this dinghy, weld these holes up, make some steps. But it's been ages since I welded some alloy, so got a bit of practice stuff. I've just cleaned this up with a stainless wheel on the grinder, just so that we can get back into swing with welding. We've got the old 205 Unimig razor set up, so this is our main welder actually on the boat with the new spool gun and a bottle of argon. So time to get a few test welds down and get back in practice. Way too hot. Now we've got our curved pieces. We were struggling to get this blue stuff off because it's been on there for a while and the UV's kind of cooked it. So we ended up just buffing it off with the stainless wheel. It's a pretty aggressive way of getting it off, but it worked. Time to get this all welded in. So we'll get this side done first. This one's ready to go. And then this one, we'll buff the blue off and weld that into that side there. This one here has been welded in. I'm not going to show you those welds because they're terrifying. This one here is about to be welded in. So we start off with something, the fit up isn't great, but if you get small manipulators, you can pull it over and then tack weld it, and you do that all the way around. So it doesn't necessarily matter that I've got a 10mm gap there and a 10mm gap there. By the time I give that the heebie-jeebies, that comes out quite good. And then so my plan is basically tack it in and then cut it down as close as I can to the shape, and then weld it in properly, and then I'll file off all of those welds. But I'll go through and we'll make sure that there's no cracks or any pinholes or anything like that in there, so because this has to hold pressure so that it's a watertight tube. over the back. Let me show you what that noise was. This is going to become that shape there. He's going to cut that out. He's got 2 of those to make, and that's going to become, down here, the flat step. So it'll get mounted in here, but we're not going to do a flat step with a 90-degree corner here. We're going to actually do a 45 and then up, so it'll be raised about 20 mil. We're going to have a very small 45 in here so that it's, when you put your bare feet on that, it's not harsh. So once I've got it welded, you can see I've gone around and chopped off the bulk of it with a saw. And over in this far corner here, you'll be able to see that I've flapped it down. You just get some close-up action. There we go. So I've flapped it right down low. Now, this does leave some issues. When you flapper it down this tight, you can see right there, there's a fine line, 2 millimeters out, the thickness of that aluminium. And that's basically not going to work. That's a crack. It's not doing properly. But it's so thin there that I can weld right on that corner and it'll melt both metals in. I can't get to that point until I've basically ripped it down like this, and I can weld it into that point there. So I'll go around now, do another small weld all the way around that rim, right the way around once I've cleaned it up, and that'll allow me to fuse both metals together really well. If I had a TIG welder, I wouldn't have to be doing this. It'd be so much simpler, but I don't have a TIG welder for aluminium. Birk's gone and made this. What it is it's a little step. Let me show you where it goes. In the back end of the dinghy, that sits down there like that. And if you look closely, you can see he's run a couple of cuts along there, bent it roughly 45, and there's a bit of a sort of curve going on there. What that allows is when we weld that in and you climb up with your bare feet, that's going to be like really nice on your feet as opposed to like a sharp, harsh bend. So we'll tack the back end of this in first, and then we can sort of move it up and down and figure out where we have to get that front so that it's square to the new piece of panel that we put in.
One of the nice things about using aluminium as a material is you can use wood saws with wax on the teeth so that you can cut your material. Aluminium hates being dirty when you're trying to weld it, so we use a stainless wire wheel on our grinder to clean up the areas we're going to weld before we get into it with the spool gun.
It's the morning after the great drizzle, and I need to get these welded in. This one's ugly, but getting there. This one needs to be tacked up and welded in. So this is kind of what we do, is go around and basically big butty ugly weld, then we shave it down like this, and then we shave it further with a flapper wheel. So it ends up getting tidier and tidier, but it allows us to see any cracks and things as we're going. And the reason I'm doing it this way is I don't have a TIG welder that can do aluminium.
So this previous footage was recorded about a year ago, and at that time we only had our Unimig 205 razor with our spool gun set up, and that's what we used for everything that we were doing when it came to aluminium. It was really good on the heavy stuff. Anything that was 6mm would absolutely smash it, but it did struggle with the really thin stuff like 2mm aluminium like the Dinghy was built out of. Since then, Unimig stepped up and donated a Unimig razor 230 AC DC multi-process welder. This thing's amazing. It can do MIG, TIG, stick, and as well as AC TIG. So that means that we can actually TIG the aluminium dinghy with this machine now.
TIG welding, although it'd be much slower to do it that way, it gives you a lot finer control, so you can sort of control your puddle, control how much the metal itself is melting. It would be the ideal way of doing it.
You might notice that this footage is pretty average when it comes to quality. This was shot on a GoPro, a camera we've since changed. We're now using DJI Osmos and Canon R7s.
So I managed to get that one welded in. This one got about halfway on that bottom and ran out of wire. Completely empty yard. I'm absolutely determined to try and get this dinghy welded up today. There's no wind, so opportune moment. Around the side here we're set up. Bit of a windbreak behind the boat. Dinghy set up with a bit of protection. Right, time to get this done. Okay, time to start welding up this front. Now, this plastic tube conduit, we've glued that down. That's holding down nice and firm, so that's not going to bash around in the waves. That was a concern. We didn't know if that glue was actually going to do it, but it worked really well. That was FX190 that we used on that. It's a fixed tech product. It's one that we use quite a bit. So, time to start welding this in. Does it go that way around? Almost doesn't look like it. First time Jess has seen these. Well, partially seen the right hand side welded in, the left hand side she's seen. Yeah, so I need to go through and do a decent clean up of the whole lot now.
Are you going to round them out?
Yeah, I'll do all of that. I just want to try and get the welding done and then I'll do the flappering after, once the wind's down. Yeah. I'm just onto the front now.
Wow, you're moving fast.
Yeah.
Woohoo! Lovely.
There's a bit of a gap at the bottom to fill.
Nothing sort of front way folks.
If you could step over it, you can MIG weld it.
That's good.
Yeah.
Oh, you'll be finished this morning, that's great.
I hope so, yeah.
Are you going to try and get it cleaned up this morning as well?
Don't know, just depends how far I get with the flappering of everything.
You don't need to worry about the wind.
No, not at all. No.
To clean it up.
Yeah.
You might as well try and get it done.
Yep. Thanks, love. The owner in her natural habitat, surveying her vessel. Wonder if we should do something about that thing. Yes, gosh, I'll ponder that some more. This panel is a bit straighter than the curve on the dinghy, so I'll weld it in and just keep bending it as I go around. Exactly the same technique that you use when you're doing the main panels on the boat, except this is soft aluminium, so you can do it by hand, which does make it a little bit faster. Gosh, that's a bit of a gap. What have I done there? I've made it slightly too high, so I've got bugger all gap here and I've got too much down there. So I will be doing a bit of panel beating and gap filling. Right, here we go. We will return to our regular programming after I have a little bit of a think. I don't understand. It was welding fine. I don't understand. It was welding fine. So I've had a really good think about it. I think I know what's going on. It was welding fine and I wasn't filming, but I started filming and then it welded like shit. So I think it's to do with the camera and got nothing to do with me or the welder or the settings or the environment or anything else.
You can see these black marks when I'm welding this aluminium. Normally this is a sign of impurities in the weld. It's pretty hard to get this to be absolutely perfect when you're welding old aluminium, so it's just something you put up with and then buff off when you're finished. Seriously, come on, welder.
So I think I figured it out, what's going on with the welder, and I think I'll show you how to repair a welder that's running a bit poor in one easy step. And I'm just going to delete all of the scenes where I swore. And there you can see, it's as simple as that to fix your welder with no swearing. Hello, what's going on here?
Eggs.
Eggs is.
It's about to peel.
27 eggs.
You better start moving and feel the music. Get your groove on and let it use you. When you feel the fire and you know it's right, pure desire, just hold on tight. Get up, down, move around, get down on the ground, get high and touch the sky. You know the reasons why. Just dance. Come on, just dance. Just dance. Come on, just dance. When the heat gets too hard to handle, and you know you're about to get it, and you can reach much higher now, you better believe it. You can look at the clouds fly by. Come on and let yourself enjoy the ride and fly a little higher, a little higher, a little higher, a little higher. It's time to let go of your inhibitions. Feel the music. It's your new addiction. Yeah, better tell your feet to do some dancing. Don't have to be all that fancy. Ow! Get up, down, move around, get down on the ground, get high and touch the sky. You know the reasons why. Just dance. Come on, just dance. Just dance. Come on, just dance. When the heat gets too hard to handle, and you know you're about to get it, and you can reach much higher now, you better believe it. You can look at the clouds fly by. Come on and let yourself enjoy the ride and fly.
In case you're wondering, that's needle gunning right above my head in the engine room. This is going to be awesome. So I've gone round, flapping it all down, and then round with a wire wheel, and you can see there's this big crack or hole in here where the weld hasn't penetrated enough. But now that I've got the bulk of the weld away, I can go in and fill this back up and then flapper it back down. And I just keep repeating that until I know that there's going to be no more holes. And then finally I pressure test the tank to make sure I guarantee there's no holes. I bet you heard none of that. Finished product. So now I need to go through and pressure test these up. I'll show you the front as well. They come out pretty good. There you go. So I've gone through, I've found a couple of little holes and I've gone and dug them out and re-welded them. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with it now. I think we need to pressure test it and find out if there's any little leaks.
This was shot about 12 months ago, back when Jason was still with us. Thank you so much for all of your help, Jace. It was awesome to have you with us.
Come on and let yourself enjoy the ride and fly a little higher, a little higher, a little higher, a little higher. Get a little higher. When the heat gets too hard to handle, and you know you're about to get it, and you can reach much higher now, you better believe.
So the guys have done an acid wash, got rid of all of the surface level corrosion. So that's aluminium oxide that forms, gets a bit crappy looking. So they've cleaned it all off and then they've gone through with WD-40 and given it a sand. Look at this, this is just beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. That is good enough to enter into Instagram and win. Pressure testing this dinghy, we used our pressure washer and we slowly built the water pressure up inside so that we could find out where all the leaks were. Now, due to the challenges of MIG welding this with a spool gun, there were quite a few, so we stopped counting when we got to about 60.
We still needed a functional outboard for our alloy dinghy, and that's what we end up with. Got it from the local tender center. And now my job is to check if that claim is right. So I'm gonna hook some fuel up and see if it runs. Step 1, mixing up some 2-store fuel. So mix the gasoline with a bit of oil, 50-to-1 ratio. There we go, got our fuel mixture done. Outboard in a bucket full of water. And for now I got a 2-liter bottle of fuel, more or less gravity fed, onto the outboard. Let's see if it runs. Might take a few pulls to get the fuel in there, because it's quite a long hose, but we will see. Let's give that a shot.
Go, you good little thing!
There we go. Seems to work.
It sounds so cute. See if we can get some forward thrust.
Perfect. So it's running a bit smoky right now. That's because I put as much oil in as it's needed for 2 liters, but that's a 1.5 liter bottle. So no surprise. Otherwise, runs perfectly.
We've never done this before, but we're really curious to find out how heavy is this little wee thing. All right, predictions. How heavy do you reckon it is? I reckon it's 45 kg.
That's pretty light.
Okay, what do you reckon?
I mean, since you said 45, I can go safe and say above that at 50 or so.
Well, so much above that.
Yeah, I think it might be 60, but
Okay, 45, 60. What do you reckon? 65? All right, the bets are in. Okay, hands off.
Aye.
Heavy little beast.
I could have gone higher.
69.4. Yeah, definitely the closest.
Is that close enough to the center for us?
Yeah, we can just pull the bum over.
Okay, we should attach a rope to pull on it.
Oh, yeah. Here you go, you just hook that in it. I'll just go up.
Yeah. Oop.
It keeps resetting the measurement. It's got to go that way.
Okay, it's yours now.
I'm just going to unhook me from you.
Yep.
Okay.
Can I get you to
Yeah,
stop?
yeah.
Great shot.
Oh, yeah. We're thinking of because at the moment it's set up for a little electric motor, and we've got holes that we can't really seal because it's plastic gluing to aluminium and it's not really holding that well. We're thinking we're not using that motor on this dinghy. We'll probably use it on the white dinghy, if anything, because it'll be much more suited to the white dinghy. So the thing maybe just take the cables out and put a bloody aluminium patch on it.
Part of the reason we went for the electric is that it was $200 or something, and we had the batteries, and it was the best thing for me at the time. I couldn't really do much with my hands, but it's exciting that it's going to have a proper, sized motor on it. And the electric will go to the little white one.
Yep, you go here. Yep. Many hours of TIG welding in front of us. So we're working up on the rear deck today because it's basically going to be windy and we need to do some TIG welding which doesn't like wind, so we're doing everything we can to protect ourselves up here from the weather, from the wind essentially. We're going to essentially box ourselves in by putting a big tarp around the sides here and create a wind barrier, and if that doesn't work we're going to weld in here. We're going to put the dinghy on the table, roll the carpet away and just work with it in the saloon. Now, common tools that we're using to prepare alloy whenever we're welding. So new stainless wheel, so we've got a wire wheel on a grinder. These things prep up the aluminium, so when you run down and you want to do say a weld down here for argument's sake, you can't have aluminium oxide on the aluminium itself. So using a stainless wire wheel like this, it was a brand new one, so there's zero chance of any mild steel being in it. It allows you to clean that aluminium up really beautifully. Another thing we do to cut aluminium and to really hoe into it is we actually put a 5-inch saw on the grinder. So we've got two grinders set up with the two different tools. This works beautifully to get a real clean cut. Now, you can't do heaps of cutting with that because the aluminium will melt onto the teeth. So you put wax. This is it's actually a cement wax. I don't know what they use it for with cement, but that's what it was sold as. It works beautifully to get a nice clean cut. And essentially what it does is it makes the teeth non-stick, so the aluminium doesn't bake onto the teeth. You have to keep replacing it, the wax on the teeth, but it does mean that you get a beautiful cut and a long-lasting saw blade. So we still need to fix up a lot of these issues. This is spool gun welding. It was just a mess. This is 2mm thick aluminium, and the spool gun was really struggling just because everything in the spool gun is set up for heavier aluminium and it struggles to get below 2mm or down to 2mm. So we're going to go through and do this with a TIG gun. So these are all MIG welds. We're going to go and clean all of these up with our TIG torch. But to do that, we need to go over with our stainless wire wheel, wherever that is, that one down there, and buzz all of these welds out, then acetone them, and then get back in with the TIG. It's coming loose. Oh, yep. All right. Buff on. Once the weld's been buffed back like that, it's time to go through the TIG and give that a clean up with a welder. So I know I'm not going to win Instagram with these welds, but I don't think they're going to leak because I'm able to see there's no pinholes when I'm welding it. So I'm pretty chuffed with that. They can polish up if we need to take a little bit of height off them, but probably just leave them as they are. I'm going to have a go at this. Ignore that fitting. That's just a fitting that we can put air in and out of these tanks or water in and out of these tanks and test them. I blew holes in this and it was just disgusting welding this. I've got pinholes around here and there's some in here, and I want to go through and weld everything up. So I'm going to go through with my stainless brush and I'm going to buzz off where I want to weld, and then I'm going to try and give this another clean up. All right, let's give that a shot. Okay, I'm going to try and fill that hole. Next week we're going to show you the full completion of this dinghy, as well as some sea trials with the new 15 horse.